here we have SolarStriker for the Nintendo Game Boy. This game was released in 1990, making it an early release for the Nintendo Game Boy. This particular copy has BL's initials on it, so whoever you are, thank you for branding the back of this cartridge with your initials. Normally I get this stuff off, but I have had a hard time getting those initials off, so I'm going to have to probably resort to a magic eraser. But anyways, back to the game. Like I said, released in 1990. It's a vertical arcade-style spaceship shooter, actually developed in-house by Nintendo specifically for the Game Boy. There's not a lot of talk about it anymore, but it's a really, really fun game. Good music in it as well. Let's take a look at some of the gameplay. Okay, so here we have the game loaded in my original Game Boy. This is actually my childhood Game Boy. So you'll see some of the lines are actually out, which I plan on getting that fixed really soon. But I actually wanted to show you this being played in the original Game Boy and then also in the Game Boy Advance, because the Game Boy Advance kind of does some cool added color and stuff to it. And it's actually easier to play on the Game Boy Advance as well, which you'll see when we get to that footage. But anyways, here we have SolarStriker. The music's pretty good on the title screen. The title screen looks pretty good. So the A and B both shoot. They both do the same thing, and if you hold it down, it kind of does 3 round bursts, which is nice. So you're not mashing, you're having to mash your fingers. And as you can see, the screen actually scrolls a little bit side to side. Oh, I got hit there. But you see, you actually start right back up where you died too. It's not one of those games where it makes you start back at the beginning of the level. Also, the hit detection on your ship is pretty forgiving. I'm doing terribly, but that's because I'm playing it through a viewfinder. This right here, we get that as a power-up. So now we have twin lasers. This actually starts to vary up the enemies a little bit. And I already got game over. That's terrible. Even the game over screen's cool though, with the ship crashing and burning. Anyways, let's take a look at it on the Game Boy Advance. You can see some of the added color palette stuff it does to it. Okay, so now we have SolarStriker loaded in my Game Boy Advance SP, which has a much better screen, so it's actually easy to play this game. Plus, it's backlit, which is nice. But as you can see right there, there's actually some added coloring there, which is nice. And I actually prefer it this way. Like I said, it's backlit, but I also like the fact that the background is now black and the stars are white, so it looks more like space. And there's less blurring, definitely, on this system. So it's all in all an easier game to play on the Game Boy Advance SP. The nice thing is though it's a fun game to play in the Game Boy Advance SP, even though it's an original Game Boy game and an early original Game Boy game. It's also really cheap. I got this particular copy at a garage sale, and it came with the hard clamshell case and the instruction manual for $5, which was a good deal. Took a look on eBay right before shooting this video, and as of the shooting of this video, it looks like you can get a cartridge-only copy on eBay for under $10 shipped if you live in the United States. Looked like the average was maybe $8 with shipping, and I would say it's definitely worth it. So you can see it starts getting kind of crazy here. I mean, there's nothing special about it. It's just a fun game to play. The graphics, because it's an early Game Boy game, are, I would probably call them mediocre, but because the game is fun to play, it doesn't really matter. And as you can hear too, the music sounds great. If this game had gotten a sequel, on the Nintendo, probably a little late for that to happen on the NES back then, but imagine what you could have done on NES hardware with color. The Game Boy is very similar in capability to the NES. The sound capabilities are very similar. The processors are very similar. But with the extra oomph that was available, and not to mention the fact that you can add things to NES cartridges, extra chips and whatnot to make the games even better, This could have been an amazing game on the NES, and it is an amazing game on the Game Boy. Still fun to play today. Definitely worth the low asking costs that it goes for right now. Oh, and I actually made it to the boss. That's actually pretty good for playing through a camera. I went right into that bullet. That sucked. And there's that game over screen again. So, SolarStriker on the Nintendo Game Boy. I would definitely recommend this game. It's an older early release on the Nintendo Game Boy, but it's still a very, very fun game, especially if you like arcade spaceship shooters. It's a blast to play. It's not overly complicated, but there is a power-up system there. There's bosses. I believe it's 6 levels. And it was developed in-house by Nintendo, so it's going to be quality. It's not going to be some garbage shovelware shooter. If you can track a copy down for under $10, I would definitely recommend picking it up.